fully believe and have for eons, and every single piece of suffering, every rebirth, everything that ever happens to us is based upon the absolute belief that there is an inherent I there. So there isn't, but it's clearly not enough to be told it isn't. So therefore, you have to analyse and analyse and analyse and look and check and watch. Understand the words. What does it mean if it did exist? What would it be like? The crucial thing, it would be independent. Of what? Of all the other things. So one of the typical analyses is, first you have to establish what you're looking for. Then you have to, that's the hardest part, and that has to be that's something that would be independent. Independent. The crucial one, the subtlest one, you'd be looking for something that's independent. Okay, we'll do the parts one. This is not the subtlest, but I'll do that one. We have to be looking for a thing, an I, that is not depending upon the rest of my body and mind. That's the way we feel. We don't think that we even conceptually to understand that is difficult. So first, even conceptually to understand that, then you have a deeper sense of what the I could be. The I we're looking for is one that is independent of the parts. So when we even know that much, we're more equipped to search for one. And the only time you're going to search is when the I arises, the feeling of I comes up, which is when you're attached. This is in daily life, forget meditation. When you're attached, when the thing happens, and the car and you don't get what you want, the feeling of I comes, and you've got to be watching this mountain of fishes, be watching to check in your mind how it appears to you. But as Lama says here, so that's why it's so difficult. What might happen is that the appearance of ego will come, but you'll miss it. It's like a thief who sneaks up when we're not looking and then hides when you turn around. If you try too hard to look for him, he disappears. This is exactly how ego mind deceives us. It's so sneaky, so intelligent. It really is an incredibly subtle thing, in other words. Unbelievably subtle and precise. So, okay, I'll just read some things that Lama says, okay? Just want to hear, okay? From the person who understands it, who's experienced it.
Please
so,
just adjust the microphone.
What?
Adjust the microphone.
Okay. So if there is a real I, the one we think is independent, existing, then what is it? You have to search. This view of ego has many levels, some grosser and some subtler. So one of the type of analysis is to, maybe, okay, in the way they put it they teach in the labyrinth, first point, there's 4-point analysis they talk about. This is not Mahamudra. This is Mahamudra related to this, but I'm talking the philosophical presentation of it now. The first of the 4 points is you have to identify the object to be negated, the independent I, which doesn't exist, we know, but we have to be convinced about it. You have to identify that. Then the second one is you have to look at the parameters of your search. You have to establish... Okay. If we just use the analysis of the parts discussion, which is not the subtlest. But it's tasty. If there is an independent I, we have to decide where it would be if we start searching. So clearly, it's sort of fairly evident. The parameters of the search have to be this, isn't it? I'm not going to look for my eye in a cup. That would be rather silly. We have to establish this. We have to establish the parameters of our search, which is this. It's the body and the mind. In here. So the two main ways we experience it in the day, we either say, oh, well, it's all of me. I'm me. All of me is me. And then the other one is, I'm the owner. I'm like the boss, the owner, who runs things. Isn't it? I do this and I do that and that is mine. There's like this little boss in there, like a landlord, who runs all the other bits. Isn't it? That's the feeling we have very strongly. And our words express that. So these are the two main options. So we either think it's all of me or we think it's a separate piece. It's either oneness with all my bits and pieces or it's separate from all the bits and pieces. We will establish that these are the only two options. So the analysis we do, this is the classical way they talk in the texts. This is in Mahamudra, you're doing this, but it's more subtle and it's more experiential, and therefore more advanced. But in the philosophical analysis, first, it's sort of like, please get me a peppermint leaf from my garden. So you've got to establish if there is a peppermint leaf, you've got to establish the parameters of where you're going to search. Otherwise you've got to search the whole planet. You've got to establish this I just said it's my garden. So you establish the parameters of my garden. That's where you've got to look for a peppermint leaf. So that's your parameters already. Now second, the first point is you've got to know what a peppermint leaf is. Second, you've got to establish it's either, it's pretty straightforward. There's only one option. It's in my garden or it's not. So the first point is, what is a peppermint leaf? You have to know that. Then you have to search. But you have to search definitively. You can't just say, I looked quickly, there's no peppermint leaf. You don't know for certain yet. You don't know for certain. So you've got to look absolutely until you've exhausted every millimetre of my garden. Then you can be confident, can you not? You will either, of two options, you will either find a peppermint leaf there, or you will be absolutely crystal clear, certain, 100% there is not a peppermint leaf there. Would we agree with this?
Yeah.
The second one is what they call you either find the peppermint leaf or you find the absence of a peppermint leaf. In other words, you recognise there's no peppermint leaf, which is meaning there is an absence. In my garden, there is the absence of a peppermint leaf. You get my point? These are the words. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you've got to search properly. So here, it's the same, which sounds hilarious to us. So what does it mean by search? Well, you've got to know what you're searching for. And that would be an I that's either oneness with all the bits, or it's the other one, which is it's a separate bit that owns the other bits. Which, so then we even did that. That was the analysis we did yesterday. So we can establish that there is a cup and a lid and a table. And if we establish those three things, that means there are three separate things. This we get. And then the conclusion from this is, therefore, they're separate, meaning they don't depend on each other. So if the lid breaks, the cup still is intact, so it's not affected. So that's the first type of analysis intellectually to do with the second one, that there is an I that's separate. We say that's, when he says you're really ugly, your nose is so ugly, Robina. How dare you insult me? I will say. Well, he didn't. So you do analysis, even in your own bed, crying. Well, he didn't insult me. He insulted my nose. Now, if my eye is set, this is the point, one argument here to prove emptiness. If there is an eye that's there that owns the nose, which is how we talk, I have a nose. With two phenomena, people, right there. Then your eye, if it really is existing independently of the nose, which instinctively we think by those words, then the eye won't mind. That is proof of emptiness, right there. But even intellectually we can't hear it, because the assumption of an independent eye is so primordial. We go, huh? Even this is like experience of that. It takes time, because we haven't not used to thinking it. Then the other one is, if, like we said yesterday, well, maybe my mind is my eye. One of the commonest things we think, and that's the closest you're going to find. The mind is your eye. Well, if your mind is your eye, meaning your mind and your body are the same as the eye, then why bother saying the word, I have a mind? Because that sounds like two things. But you're just saying your mind is your eye, which is one thing. So make up your mind. So the Buddha's saying it's neither oneness with the parts, nor is it separate from the parts. Doing that analysis intellectually, and then this analysis, and this is not Mahamudra, in the meditation, then you get the conclusion, wow, therefore there is no independent I. Realization of emptiness. Are we communicating?
Yes.
Are we communicating? Yeah. So if there's no peppermint leaf in that garden, you can say, wow, I've just discovered the emptiness of peppermint leaf. That's the analysis. Now this is the way you do it in an analytical way. Now the point is, the person who's done all this study, like Renee said, he's done all this study, then he's equipped to really get the experience in meditation. So assuming you've studied all this and done all this, you don't put, it's like your point, it's all the work you've done in the past that informs your ability to do it in meditation. So I'll read you what Lama says. You're watching you're focusing on your mind. focusing on the mind. So all the initial arguments, maybe it's my body, maybe it's my mind, maybe it's separate, maybe it's not, and he's saying all these things. You will see that ego mind's object is not the body, it is not the mind, and it's not even the combination. These are not what ego holds. We've got to observe this, come to the conclusion of this. These are not ego's problem. Yet it's not enough to think the I is not my body, not my mind, not the combination. Nor is it enough merely to not have the appearance. And you see, all this stuff is so precise, isn't it? So we can think we realise emptiness because all your thoughts are gone, or there's no sense of I there. So, I've now realised emptiness. But that's just a temporary cessation of the appearance of an I. That's not enough. Or perhaps you have some view of what you think the self is. Maybe I'm this. And then you discover that view is not true. Oh, I'm not this. That's not the realisation of emptiness. So anyway, these experiences are good. Perhaps you even reached beyond your body, almost as if it doesn't exist. But you haven't yet identified the nuclear energy of ego, the self-existent I, which doesn't exist, which produces all the problems. So, okay. So go more deeply. Check carefully. Stay focused on the clarity of your mind. Move the mindfulness fish without disturbing the clarity. It watches intently. It is ready to capture the conception of ego. What ego mind is really holding is an I that exists from itself. It totally believes that somewhere deep inside you, solidly within you, beyond the body, beyond the mind, there is this concrete identification, me. It's something that is quite unrelated, that is not dependent, that is not an interdependent phenomenon, that is not dependent, especially on the name I, self. This feeling of an unrelated, independent, concrete, unmovable, unshakable self-entity, me, an essential energy here somewhere, this is me, is so deeply rooted, it's instinctive, spontaneous, beyond intellect. And it's continuously there. It doesn't matter whether you're asleep, awake, talking with others, on your own, or even if you forget yourself. Ego continuously holds this concrete entity I. Even if you imagine someone cutting your body into pieces until there's nothing left, you'll still feel that there's an independent, unrelated I there. This is so intuitive, so spontaneous. So with your mindfulness fish, watch for that I. The I that exists from itself, without depending on the name, that goes beyond the relative characteristics. So the other, see, we've only talked about the past, but this is already implying the real meaning of emptiness, which now gets really kind of more subtle. You know? They say that it's harder to realise the emptiness of a phenomenon than it is to realise the emptiness of your own self. But sometimes it seems to be kind of easier. So let's discuss that. The subtlest meaning of emptiness is that there's nothing in anything that doesn't depend upon the mind calling it that. So I don't think a prison is easy. A good example, simple, and we know examples of this. It's not complicated. A prison. So if you take the conventional definition of a prison, I can tell you, especially in America, it's an ugly house where you're sent where you're naughty and that you can't escape from. It's always usually ugly, you know. Some prisons, in Europe, the more you go north, the prettier the prisons are. They're really like places you choose to go to. The care is incredible, the education is fantastic. Like you'd be loving to be in prison in Norway or something, you know. But not in the United States, I promise. Anyway, let's just say that's the conventional definition of a prison. It's an ugly place where you're sent when you're naughty, or when they think you've been naughty, that you can't escape from. That's a pretty good definition, I'd say. Now, in general terms, we know in ordinary world, that is not a place you choose to live in. For example, you look up the real estate and they say, free room in a prison. I don't think you'd go. Get my point? Because we recognise immediately conventionally. Conventionally, you know, if you know there's a potato and there's a poison thing there, you just choose the potato. I mean, there's a conventional reality we all relate to. There's a conventional statement. That's the prison. Now, this is the point. What we don't realise is ego grasping the root delusion, Lama calls it ego mind. The root delusion is instinctive, primordial, frantic, grasping at everything as having an inherent, intrinsic, real, independent, solid, concrete entity, energy. That instinct, that ego, that delusion in us, without our realizing it, as Mahamudra puts it, decorates on top of that prison that conventionally is there, but that's quite subtle, don't think you even know what that means, but decorates on the conventional reality a concrete energy of that very word, those very words. But we can't tell the difference, like we said here, between the real prison and the wrong prison. We can't tell the difference between the real I and the wrong I. So one of the implications of grasping at something as being absolute in itself, let's say prison, being bad, that's what ego grasping does. Or, absolute, definite, the cake is in itself, in its nature, in the chocolate, in the sugar, in the flour, intrinsically in the cake, it is intrinsically delicious, meaning having nothing to do with my observation of it. There's that divine cake there, and it's separate from me, and I'm this innocent victim, and it's begging me to eat it. What choice do I have? That's an implication of ego grasping. So we think, and the prison the same. It is. Most of my friends in prison, because they get long sentences there, on death row, 30 years, for blinking at the wrong, practically sometimes. Then it's totally ugly. You feel completely paralysed. It is in its nature ugly. In its nature there is no freedom. So you have all these millions of viewpoints about it, so you become profoundly depressed. So it's the same as seeing the cake as intrinsically delicious. In each case, there's a feeling of a separate me here, playing no role in how I see it. We don't think we see things a certain way. We don't think we have any opinions about a prison. We think what we think prison is what it looks like to us. Ugly, horrible, disgusting. The cake is divine, delicious, and we are like this innocent victim separate from it. That's the real meaning of how ego grasping functions. So when I've got anger, because all the other delusions are rooted in this one, they've all got this function of having a fixed view. So when I say, you looked at that girl, he says, I didn't, Robina. Let me say he didn't. I won't believe that. I will be convinced that the cake is divine. I will be convinced that he did that. I won't think my mind played any role at all. I don't. So I will, and that's the thing. We are convinced. Things, you see, from eons of having this ego grasping, Buddha says, everything appears to us like that. So continuously, so totally, so completely, that we don't realise that actually what's happening is in the mind, there are these layers and layers and layers and layers of conceptions that have built up this massive story that we then dump on top of the prison, David, the cake. This is what Buddha's saying. So as in other ways, as we keep progressing, as we keep looking at our mind, as we keep identifying the neuroses, the disturbing, the delusions, the exaggerated stories, we strip them away, start arguing with them, realise they have no basis. You keep stripping away, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, until you've stripped away even the conception of an inherent anything. As Lama Zopa says, when we realise that, it's as if there is nothing. But there is. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't. Now that doesn't mean the cake will now look like a tomato. No, it still looks like a cake, acts like a cake, tastes like a cake. It is a cake. But our view of it, we can't separate our view of what is there and what's there. This is what Buddha's saying across the board. Yes.
We can't or can't?
Can't. Yeah.
In order to reach
So I haven't finished with the prison yet, so I want to keep... Never mind, ask your question.
In order to reach this stage of being the feeling, seeing that the cake per se is not the source of pleasure,
Yeah.
I think, humbly, saying it,
Yes, that's right. I know.
I don't need to make all the way to emptiness
No,
of the mind.
no. Even that, no, attachment is a grosser delusion. So to lessen attachment, you don't yet need to realise emptiness, although it helps. Totally, completely.
So here, because what's happening is you start by saying we don't have I. And afterwards, I'm so scared that I don't have I because I feel I have I. I feel attacked and
That's
go,
right.
my
That's right,
I
yeah.
is becoming stronger.
Yeah.
And then you say, May relax, you have an I. Relax. So I'm saying, why do you need all this big jump and then go back and say you have an I? Isn't it enough to say, look, your I is not as you think.
Whatever word you like. Lama Zopa has his own style for saying these things. So he's a yogi who's experienced it, so I value his words. So we have to hear the words that make sense to us. Sometimes some people's words make sense and sometimes they don't. That's our decision. Okay. All right. So, okay, let's finish with the prison. So, having ego grasping, we believe that prison is inherently a prison and I'm an innocent victim of it and I'm plonked in it. Then the conclusion from that is, I have no choice but to suffer. The conclusion of having an inherent cake is, I have no choice but to eat it. Isn't it? That's how we feel. We're a victim of it. Victim is a good word for ego, and I'm not trying to be mean, because people in the world is terrible, but that's one way of saying what. When you have a strong ego grasping, you're paralysed. Somehow everything happens to you. You have no say in it. You don't feel you have a say in it. Things happen. Ugly things are there, beautiful things are there, and it's got nothing to do with me. That's why Buddha says we have so much fear. Because all the delusions, ego grasping, the root one, are completely oneness with fear. And that's because they're not accurate assessments of reality, and we're believing in lies for eons. There's always this terrible disconnect, But the fear and suffering comes with the prison, because we believe it is that in the bricks, in the bones, in the wire, in the cells. It's inherent prison. So even in that one, you have to do the analysis. Well, where is this inherent prison? And if you do the same analysis as for the I, you will come up with the absence of an inherent prison. Now that woman in Florida, whom I quote, who in the 70s was hitching with a hubby in Florida with the kids, hippies, got picked up by two guys. The police stopped the guys killed the cops and blamed the hippies. I remember reading her memoir. And their husband even got executed. Now I think, that's kind of intense suffering, right? Can you imagine? All these years, no one believes you, the whole world doesn't believe you, the police don't believe you, the prosecutors, the judge, the jury, the wardens, everybody. You're a monster, you murdered two police. So they're treated like animals, they're the worst people in the universe, they're on death row. They are completely and totally and 100% innocent. And she was found to be innocent eventually, but the husband was even executed. Can you even imagine the nightmare? So normal view for us, because of ego grasping, and because of attachment, and because of anger, and because of all the delusions in us, and we've all got them, so join the universe here, this is why we suffer. A normal person with all of these very strong would go completely insane. I remember reading about one guy at the same time as this woman, who'd also been accused wrongly and was on death row, and he literally went insane. So the Buddha's analysis is because he's got ego grasping, therefore attachment, therefore anger, therefore arrogance, and all the other unpainful, unhappy states of mind. Which of course every time we hear this is so cruel to us, because it sounds like Buddha's blaming us. That's why I'd rather blame David, No, not yet. Not yet. This is very hard to hear. You've got to be quite grown up already to go, wow, Buddha, that's an interesting analysis. I think I'll look into that one. You mean my own delusions are the problem? Wow, at least I can change them. That's the attitude. You'd be so happy to identify them, because they're the cause of your pain. And then also, the virtues are causing happiness too. We're looking at the suffering here. So this guy out of his brain screaming daily as long as he had a voice, I did not rape and kill that woman. But this woman, she did yoga and stuff. She must have had an extraordinary special mind. She mustn't have had much attachment. She certainly didn't seem to have much anger. And therefore she must have had not too much ego grasping. Because she seemed to have the ability, based on doing a bit of yoga, a bit of meditating, whatever, but so unusual, so rare, so special, she had the ability to really change her mind, doing exactly the way Buddha talks. And so she said, at some point, she finally realized she could not change anything. But they can't take my mind from me, she said. So I decided, I'm not a prisoner. I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell. I'm in a cave. Now, that analysis is exactly as all the Tibetan lamas will teach us in the most advanced level of the Bodhisattva path, and they call it the whole genre of practices, transforming problems into happiness. Seeing bad things as good. Now, why would you want to do that? Any reasons? Just give me some simple reasons. Why would she want to think this way?
Because you don't suffer if you think so.
Right. Any other opinions why she wants to think that?
Maybe because of karma.
No, that's too complicated. Keep it simple. She's right, because it makes you happy. Huh?
To survive.
Not even survival, no. No,
That's
well,
the
listen.
only way to make it meaningful.
Yeah, but that's one way. But a simple way is she was able to change her mind, realizing that what's the point of suffering? What's the point of going crazy? What's the point of being angry? What's the point of killing, lying, stealing? So those words are easy, right? But excuse me, look at your own life. Look at how you feel. Look how you get upset, angry, resentful, blame. Look how, we all in the whole universe act. So to do what she did is pretty sublime. But if you've got a political view, I mean, you think she's an idiot. You think she's a maniac. You think she's a pathetic, passive person who puts up with rubbish. But the interesting point was, she never stopped trying to get out. She never stopped working on her appeals. She didn't. See, that's the thing. When we think anger, we think action and you'll get things done. Then we think patience. We think you become passive and you put up with crap. No. She never stopped working on her appeals, but she did it with sanity and clarity and courage and bravery and intelligence. Do you get my point? And in the end, she got out. She didn't just sit there feeling sorry for herself. But the tragedy, so even without karma, even without going into karma, even without knowing whether your mind is, like I said, your toenail or your brain or you're not, I don't care. We're all capable of this. But you've got to have a pretty good mind to do it.
Yeah.
So all Buddha's doing is he says we can learn to become like that. You just don't cross your fingers and hope you are like that, but you can become like that. Do you get my point here, people? And the only reason is here, in her case, for her own advantage, to her own advantage. But this is enormous enough, and it doesn't contradict getting out there and demonstrating every day against the suffering of the world. Tibetans, in 87, they had this mini uprising, so the first since 59. And the main demonstrators were all the young radical monks and nuns. Now, hear the words, monks and nuns. They have karma. They have the view of not killing. They're not angry. Think about it. But they demonstrated. So we assume demonstrating equals anger. Not for them. But for them, so, okay, one of my friends, Jigdro, a monk, I met him after he'd escaped. In 87, he said his mother and father decided to make many Tibetans. So they had 13 children, I mean, didn't help. There's 3 times more Chinese communists there, so they lost the battle, So anyway, he was one of 17 kids, and he became a monk, went to Saroja Monastery since a little boy. Then as they got older, all this stuff happening. So remember, he's got the view of karma. This is in their bones. In the same way that the materialist view is your mind is your brain, your mummy made you, etc. That's our worldview. That's their worldview. Do you get my point here? Let's just assume for them. And indeed, he's also studied it, so it's something real for him. So there he is with his view of karma, with his view of the mind, all the way I'm talking this weekend. That's his view. That's his model for life. But this is the point where we get clear about conventional reality and ultimate, and we get clear about what is right and wrong, that we don't get confused and think, well, that means you don't be angry. If we all deserve it, then we must let them hit us. We'll let them murder us. No, that's not the conclusion. That's nihilism. They have the answer. They know why it's happening. But it's also wrong, relatively. It does not belong to China. That's a conventional fact. So then they demonstrate. Then they got arrested. He got imprisoned, then he got released, the first lot. Then he demonstrated again. His friend had his head blown off. Then he thought he'd better escape. So he escaped to Nepal, and that's where I met him, at Courtin. So he's telling me the story that since he left, his father got murdered, brother got murdered, suffering in other words, and there were sort of tears And I said to him very casually, this is like 30 years ago, I think. I said, do you ever get angry, Ding Dong? And this is his casual answer. He laughed. He said, Robina, what for?